Feet have always been a passion of mine since I've been doing this work, not only just for the whole structure of them. I don't feel that any man could design the human foot. If this was an engineering project or an architecture project at school, let's say that you were to have the functions that are capable in a human foot presented in a structure, I don't feel, you know, a college person or an engineer of that form could put it together. The human foot should be able to jump, stop, skip, whatever within a millisecond. Go into rest, go into a marathon, go into... And it's the most, I feel, underappreciated unit of the system because nobody improves foot function other than learning how to walk and crawl and run. We don't go to the gym for feet. We might get a massage, but even that doesn't deal with function, changing the function of the foot. Like even what you went through, having your arm taped to your chest, nobody considered the function of the foot in relationship to the rest. See, grab them by the tail. Light. I have cool toys.
Yes, she does. She's a whole toy store in the back.
We only think too of foot function in a case, especially like with cerebral palsy, diabetic neuropathy, things that start happen that impede our life functions. Do we start to think of maybe there's a problem with the foot? But most people think to, quote, stretch or change the shape or the action of the foot, again, instead of the function. So one of the things that needs to happen is that foot, and we can really watch Arlie, that's why I was just sort of videotaping, but when you actually look at how a true infant is just experiencing life through the feet. So most people look at the cute, the snuggle part, but look at everything that she does, the counter and the rotation through her feet that happen. And what's really interesting is how much the toes grip and change function as she moves. She's been photographed now since she was 2.5 months old, right?
She's lived at Michelle's office.
So that's the one thing people really don't take into consideration with special needs kids because they want to fix the foot.
Right.
And I have to remind them, where is that foot fixed? She's all over, it looks like she's gonna just fall over in 3 seconds, the way your toes go up and down, but she has to figure out foot function.
Right, you mean like fixed like in an orthotic.
Or orthotic, or even in a stander, or the fact that the foot has to present at 90-degree angles. You know, look at how much her foot, in a sense, wobbles. See, like that? Like, look, it looks like she's gonna fall down, and she doesn't. But see how, there, you know? But she's just figuring out backwards in a better way. She's kicked that thing, she's not looking down, she's totally, you know, you don't hear, watch where you're going, you don't hear a very precautious foot function. So if you just, and when she was just sitting with the mom with the beads in her feet, that's the part I like to videotape it. She literally was raking with her toes, you know, the beads and stuff like that. But see all the fine counterbalancing that's going on through the toe patternings that, again, you don't see because shoes are on and all of those kind of things. And that function is supposed to happen through all these fine bones. So a human foot, I should be able to take any foot, in a sense, and let them walk sideways. So I should be able to roll over onto the side. I should be able to roll. Even here, I should be able to just lightly put a heel up And at the same time, if I press the heel in, I should be able to bring the toes up into a functional, at least to get my fingers underneath it. Now that being said, most people that I mess with, if I were to say I'm just gonna lift your heel up, they would literally feel like they're gonna fall over. You know, their heels are so implanted into the ground, and I'm going to do this to you. And same thing, if I go underneath the toes, it's almost like, again, trying to get these little cement piggy wiggies off the ground. That's the only thing about doing this work. I still think of this little piggy no matter what I'm doing. It's very hard to go into a more professional, even if they're 90-something. I sit there and go, this little piggy went to market. Sorry, Frank's toes do like to spin. That doesn't normally happen with a typical human being, but... What happens with, let's say, cerebral palsy, neuropathies, diabetic neuropathies, the reason I always go back to diabetic neuropathies and chemoneuropathies, because I believe those are man-made. If you look at the amount of spacing giving in between all these little fine bones, it's not much. You don't see the cartilage representation per se on Frank like you would in the vertebrae columns and that kind of thing. There are ligaments, I get it. But I really learned this more so through Graham's nasal cavities, you know, that the infection he had was in the upper ethmoid, septoid cavities. I was told outright, there's so little blood that goes through that area of the body that getting antibiotics there, because there's hardly any blood that goes through, I mean, good luck. So if you've got fine capillaries that are going into the upper arch function or the top of the foot, and you know, what I'm doing here, I'm not even going to go underneath the foot today. I'm just going to work with the sort of the topical functions that we can see. Once those sugar capillaries get in there, or molecules, or chemo molecules get in there, it literally blocks functions, and therefore the brain turns off functions onto the patternings of the foot. So I sort of call it a man-made neuropathy. And really, a movement lesson is quite successful to go in there and let the brain know that the chemo's gone, the sugar's gone, we can have function again. True neuropathies is more like what Dad has and stuff, where, you know, he's just losing function of the whole leg, actually, not even the foot.
The whole body.
Yeah, but I mean, because my dad has Charcot-Marie-Tooth. But that being said, he still golfs, even though he can't feel from his thighs on down. He still walks. He's not ambulatory. He just believes if you don't use it, you lose it. Because one of his brothers ran to orthotics, and he's the most handicapped. Another thing that should be able to happen is going underneath the arch and sort of playing, and see how you can see much easier when I do something like this in Frank, how the weight very much transfers like Arlie. And you can see that swing even out in the hand functions of Frank, how that weight will transfer and go. So if you really mess with this function, now also that same function, this is where I kind of argue with cerebral palsy, hypertonia, all of that. People think that the reason the foot's the way it is based off of pure muscle function. I get it that the muscles are engaged in ways you don't want them to be. They're acting like a skeletal system. But what's really happening, I more so believe, what we were watching in Arlie, how her balance and counterbalance is happened in her pelvis way earlier. And you can still see the pelvis reflected in the synchronizing of the movements and all of that. Whereas what happens with birth trauma babies that have that kind of trauma to the rotation, that's my whole point of catching it right at birth. So you can start developing that first situation or that conversation of balance through the pelvis. So when that balance doesn't happen properly, the feet need to contract in such a way so the system doesn't fall or lose its balance. Very similar to what you start seeing in an aged adults. They start, especially if they've fallen once, they get more concerned that they're going to lose their balance. Even though they might presently have it, they're like starting to chase something that's not in their system, and they make it into their system. So they start, holding their breath. Like someone was telling me about her 94-year-old mother can walk backwards and can't walk forward. I said, she's holding her breath. And she goes, what? Well, if you go to walk and hold your breath, your foot can't present out. so it'll stumble, it'll almost fall. Whereas backwards, you don't have the same conversations of holding the breath, and it's easier to do.
Do you ever notice that? My mom was a long-term care nurse for with a lot of people with Alzheimer's. Yeah.
Yeah. If your brain is worried about balance, learning can't happen. Balance, breathing, heart function. If those become a conscious life force or a conscious thing that you got to deal with, everything else just goes out the window. So the more, it doesn't matter if they're babies or if they're aged seniors or someone that's just had a massive car accident, the more you can integrate a balance and a counterbalance into the system, the healthier that brain will be to be able to respond.
Like with my mom, she got in the accident and she was so focused on her balance that she couldn't hardly function about a lot of things. And when you told her quit thinking about that, look at the things around you, and she quit focusing all the time on whether or not she was dizzy, it got so much better.
But it integrated back into her system.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, if you watch Arlie move around, her system's totally on balance, but it should be a subconscious force.
Yeah.
If she starts worrying about balance, that's where you have a body that presents more like Gideon. Even though Gideon doesn't know I'm concerned about balance, that's how it's his system's functioning around it. So the more and more he's learning how to balance through the pelvis, especially in sitting, that's where you're seeing the increase in the fine motor skills of the hands. Because he doesn't have to be so worried about where he is in his chair, and now he can start doing that. Now we have to present that conversation through his system more and down more into his legs.
No, Arlie.
And also what this is for, the reason this is so important, again, what Arlie's doing, what happens to start decaying in seniors, well, what if they hit a stone or they hit the curb wrong? Well, a true functioning foot should function more like Arlie, that they go and they wobble a little bit, but you know, they don't fall down like a Weeble. But the more and more the foot becomes more, that this is becoming more of a solid function, or doesn't know how to balance and counterbalance, one wrong move, it's going to take you down. So then what starts happening is now the person is now looking to the floor constantly too, to scan their environment, but doing it like, you know, they don't want a rock to present. So now the head starts, and now that changes the movement of the spine, which then therefore makes balance even worse. That's why by looking around side to side keeps the spine much more flexible, therefore the pelvis is more flexible, so the feet can be more flexible.
I look down because I don't want to fall.
Well, that's what I just said.
Yeah.
You're looking down because you don't want to fall.
Yeah.
But when you do that, it starts bringing the back down, you start to get
Right.
more of the rounded back,
Absolutely.
you start
Got
getting
it.
more of the... So I'm gonna move Frank and see if I can get Arlie up here on my little stage, if she'll let me.
Where did we get the name Frank from?
Frank came, that was his name on the internet when someone, this was a gift from someone that watches my videos.
Okay.
So that was his name on the internet. So she said I could change his name, but I figured that.